Hi, folks. Layman Pascal here on the Integral Stage. You know, we have a number of series of interviews, but we also like to experiment. Who knows what might turn out to be the seed of a future series, or what subtle value might be hiding in an unusual place that's difficult to name. One of my most treasured practices personally is to take seriously what I glimpse out of the corner of my eye. And I've glimpsed something in the online interactions between Jason the McClain and Scout the Scoutleader Wiley. And what was it that I was sensing there? You know, maybe a joy, a kind of freedom that operates despite agony and frustration and limitations, an interest in transformation, humor, reversals, maybe something golden, a quality of fandango, a dash of glimmershish, the melodious sound of what the ancient Kevdorakians called the Hushamatoodle.
That's the one.
Thank you. Yeah. Both these people seem to me to be on the other side of political correctness. They both seem to be open and sexual and humorous and mimetic and self-revealing and maybe a little bit cantankerous. Yeah, there you go. Who knows what all that is altogether, but this talk is going to be an attitudinal hangout. So everybody's in my living room right now, and if you're looking for well-reasoned, well-packaged, integral content, try one of our other many offerings. I'm expecting Scout to be all over the place. I'm expecting Jason to be almost wantonly offensive. And I'm expecting myself to ask a lot of alternatingly personal and ultra-philosophical questions about the play of reversals in all our lives. Hi, guys. Great to have you here.
What an intro.
I refuse to be wantonly offensive because I don't like to live up to other people's expectations. So,
perfect. The meta contrarian.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. Actually, I'm going to write that down. I'll credit you.
You should. That's
the meta contrarian.
Oh. All right. Let's start abstract and then build toward the personal, if that's possible. This is the opening question that might make this sound like it's reasonable for integral people to watch. What do you guys think the integral community has too much of, and what does it have not enough of? Yeah, Jason, go first.
Well, first, I just want to say that it is a joy to interact with Scout all the time. So I really appreciate her brilliance. Her laugh, of course, and she's one of the smartest people I know. So, and well versed. She's actually asked me questions about spiral dynamics that I hadn't even thought of. I was like, oh, that's like recently. She asked me about perceptual positions and you know, state the agentic versus the sacrificial side of the double helix. Anyway, I think the integral community has too much emphasis on cognitive understanding, and you've heard a version of this from me before, and not enough on emotional and value integration of each stage. And I've seen people sort of, I left the integral community online, on Facebook when an argument broke out over whether 1 + 1 = 2, and it was a really long argument. And I was like, "Look, man, you guys are confusing, external objective with interior subjective. You're collapsing quadrants," and it was such a shit show. And it seems to have been taken over by people who are really, really, really smart. And have no idea how to integrate those principles as a way of being or as a behavioral, behaviorally. And I think the integral community doesn't have enough community. Like it's not one of my friends who used to own half of Integral Boulder, I was talking to him about it. He left. He's like, screw, transformation, screw personal development communities in general. And I said, I was complaining about the integral community. He goes, well, you keep using that word community. I would assert there really isn't an integral community. And I went, wow. So Scout.
Okay, nice. Yeah, Scout.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting question because, and I'm glad that Jason ended with that quote about, is there an integral community? Because part of the reason I asked you that question, Jason, so recently I asked Jason a question. Trust me, this is related. Recently, I asked Jason a question because I'm studying his sort of framework of evolutionary NLP. and we learned about perceptual positions fairly recently. And that's one of the first things that like you sort of challenged me to work on, was like shifting through the perceptual positions of, you know, self, other, and then the fourth one, the third one, observer, the fourth one, witness. Because like I'm wondering if I'll answer your question with my own question. I wonder if like being at an integral sort of stage of values makes it more difficult to have a community in the first place, because it's sort of a strategic, individualist, very detached. It's really difficult to like, for example, with like green values, because the values are, it's so community oriented by nature. It's like your identity is formed based on like how you connect to people. Whereas like if your values are integral, your identity is constantly shifting based on like what makes the most sense, you know, to be in that moment. And it can make you a very difficult person to connect to, especially myself. I would think that like people find me incredibly confusing and hard to connect to because they don't really know who I am. I'm very unpredictable to like someone whose values are more based in green or blue, something that is more collectivist. Because it's like you're supposed to be what's best for the community, but instead you're being what's best for whatever you think is the best at the moment, which we don't always agree on. And then there's no consensus there. And it's like, is this person a safe person to trust?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a sort of a protean quality to people who have that level of sophistication of values, and also a compulsive rebalancing of things that goes on for them. As well as, I mean, you've
definitely compulsive.
If you've made yourself into a really, unique human being who's integrated a whole bunch of weird stuff, then your standard for a good relationship goes way up, because you want somebody else that also has a lot of that. So I think there's a difficulty in finding community, in part because you have higher standards. But I think for me, the biggest thing is the qualities that traditionally make communities aren't present. Right. We're mostly having a discussion space. We're not we're not dating enough. We're not hiring each other enough. We're not buying each other's couches. We're not under assault from a rival community of some kind. Right. There's all these traditional things that allow people to develop the instincts of a community, and we lack almost all of them except discussion.
Yeah, brilliant from both of you. Yeah, there's something you said about compulsive rebalancing that I think is like, I went, yeah, I do that almost weekly. Like it's my energetic flows, like sometimes I'll just, like the day before, I'll just put an event in my calendar that says no, and it's it just blocks off the day. If there's like already, maybe there's already a client there, but other than that, oh God, there's something else you said there that was amazing. Well, anyway, I agree with everything you both said. That was
sure. All right. Well, let me dig a little bit more into whatever vibe you two might have in common here, if there's such a thing. Because go ahead.
There is one thing I wanted to, and I'm about to write a piece about this. The big lie of, because I'm moving into the evolutionary gentleman material and full spectrum lover stuff, and a good part of that's going to be like just how to date successfully. I think the big lie of relationship coaches, if you will, as they call themselves, relationship, let me project my values onto you and hope it works for you. Fucking so tragic. They really have no business doing this. Anyway, for that very reason, they project, like they have an idea of how relationships are supposed to be. They project that onto you. They tell you how to get that. And it's like, they didn't even ask them what kind of relationship they want or who they want it with or what anyway. The big lie of relationship coaches is, if you do all this personal work, you can manifest your perfect partner. The reality is, and I'm quite the romantic, actually. Like I'm a gushy hearted, sprinkle rose petals on her in the bath, write poetry for her kind of romantic. It's really fucking hard to find a good fit when because first of all, like you said, Layman, your standards go up. It's like, there's just a bunch of bullshit that I'm not going to put up with for pussy. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to, even if I'm madly in love with her, I'm going to be like, yeah, God, I wish I hadn't fallen in love with her. I'm gonna actually, and like almost every woman I've ever been with, I left while I was still in love with her, or she left. Like there was never like I hate her or resent this person. It was like this isn't fucking working, but I'm in love, so I usually stay longer, like trying to work it out, or trying to take more responsibility for an interaction. But it's just a big lie that the more work you do, the easier it is to find a partner. You can know what kind of partner you want, but it actually takes a lot longer. You're far more discerning. Your sight about what dynamics are at play is far deeper. I don't know. I am unwilling to deal with a bunch of stuff. So as a result, I have very few friendships. I'm also willing to end them. Like if there's I'm not going to keep playing into unhealthy dynamics. I'm going to extricate myself from them, sometimes abruptly, because if I perceive the person can't actually hear what I like, if I have determined based on some attempts that they won't be able to, they don't have the capacity to make the adjustments they would need to make for, or resolve whatever they need to resolve for me to have it feel like it's clean. Then I'll just end it. Because people here at their level of development. So they're going to, if I determine there's a self-esteem issue at play and then I bring something up, they're going to be like, oh, are you saying I'm not good enough? I'm like, no, that's not what I said at all. But so fuck it. That's my.
And I would actually, thank you for saying that. Cause I would actually say like people choose relationships. I mean, this is probably super obvious to both of you, but people choose relationships based on their level of development as well. Like what are relationships for changes over time? Like I choose relationships because I like receiving multiple perspectives. Some people choose relationships so then I end up choosing challenging relationships and valuing that. Some people choose relationships because they need to feel mirrored and comforted and okay with themselves. Right. They choose people that they feel very relaxed around. So yeah, the values thing, it's like when you have different values in a relationship that could, a lot of relationship coaches will claim you gotta have the same values set or you gotta have the same blah, blah, blah. But the types of, and this shows up in the polarity community as well. They're like, polarity is this, polarity is that. It's like, what kind of polarity works depends on what you want, like what your outcomes are, what your values are. There's a whole lot of context that plays into that too.
And pre-rational polarity is going to look radically different than trans-rational polarity. And there's a pre-trans fallacy going on again in the thanks for reminding me of the pre-trans
big
fallacy.
Time. I'm glad you're bringing this up because it's the single most annoying thing about the polarity community right now.
God.
All right. What was I thinking of? Oh, I read a thing on Scout's Facebook feed. Okay, here it is. On Scout's Facebook feed, I read a post from Jason quoting Scout saying that Jason has been coaching her and has a piercing soul. And that's pretty tangled, quasi-incestuous communication structure. But
since she refers to me as dad, I would, and Damien as well, I would prefer you not use the word incestuous.
Okay, I'll bracket it for now.
Tangled,
redacted.
Tangled, yeah, we can go with tangled.
It's just complex, Layman.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think you have in common? Like, where do you guys connect? And do you think that tells us something just about the two of you, or do you think it tells us something about, how people need to be in order to have a more lively, authentic postmodern conversation, or something like that?
Well, the biggest thing we have in common is she pays me to help her evolve.
That's what you're looking for in a relationship.
I mean, hey. In a professional relationship.
Of course.
Are you back on the incest thing? Oh my God. I think this is, I know, right?
I didn't mean to offend you with a trigger word.
This guy. I mean, what's next? You're just gonna reach through the screen and punch me? God, Layman. That was good. So So I
sorry if
think,
I'm being too abusive for you. I apologize.
you know, to be honest, I don't know why people get offended by stuff. You know what offends me? When people get offended. I'm like, what the fuck? That's offensive that you got offended. I'm offended.
The one thing that
know,
we have in common is that we're both. The only difference there is that like you do it on purpose and I don't.
That's a fair assessment. The number of times I have to be like, that was intentional. Fuck, God.
I know.
I had to keep doing it with the person, that one person in the class. Like, I'm leaving the music is intentional. So for me, what's really critical in all my friendships is actually an understanding of integral theory, and like it's just, and same with coaches. Like if a coach doesn't understand stages, I openly refer to them as two-dimensional, and I mean that. Like it's flatland coaching.
Yeah.
You have to understand stages, whether it's ego development or, you know, I mean, you don't have to know spiral dynamics, but you got to get that people evolve through stages and what they need to address first that will have sequenced, you know, the thing that's sequenced next happen more easily, that will then give rise, you know, to whatever they want to have flourish. And so I think just, you know, understanding verticality, being comfortable with that, but I also think just a certain level of personal freedom. Like I'm a nightmare to be around if you're not comfortable with yourself. Like you'll be constantly, you know, misinterpreting what I'm up to or taking something personal that I didn't even, whatever, personally adverbs. So I think, you know, but if you are comfortable with yourself and, you know, comfortable with, you know, kind of a fluid experience of life, I'm a blast to be around, but I'm a fucking nightmare if you have all these rules or rigidity around. And I don't want to be around those people either. They're not fun. So, I mean, it's one of the things I love about Scout is her playfulness and her, is this your analog for ADHD? Is that you have a analog for it now? Is that it?
Yeah.
Did I do that
right? Yeah. It's your way. I'll coach you through it.
Wait, do I have to pay you for that?
What about you, Scout? Where do you think?
Considering that the coaching was unsolicited, I would say no.
Yeah, feel free to answer verbally or gesturally, but where do you think you guys connect?
I would say, well, so the thing, I'm getting back into astrology lately because I'm trying to like.
We connect right here. I'm sorry, please continue.
We strike the pose and we call it a fucking day. Sorry. I don't know how like much of a potty mouth I can be on this
go as far as you like
on the integral stage.
I broke the hymen on that in minute 3. Barrier. I meant barrier.
Right. Literally, I can't believe I'm worried. I'm like, literally the McClain is here. Like, what is it worried about?
I like to get all the fucks out of the way in the beginning, and then I, you know.
Sensible policy.
Right. First you fuck around, and then you find out. What was your question again, Layman? I completely forgot what we were talking about. I have no idea what we're talking about.
All right, I'm going to drop that question and proceed to my next inquiry.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm just having a good time and involving myself.
Layman has asked where you think we connect. You know.
Well, we both have a dirty / dark sense of humor, and I think that really helps. Like, because we're comfortable like exploring weird spaces, and like we've definitely in like our professional relationship explored some weird spaces. And then like, so there's like this sort of like mutual love of exploration and this mutual sort of lack of fear towards certain things.
Also, do you think that's peculiar to like your temperament, or do you think that's something that the so-called community in general needs more of?
I think the world needs more of it. Like we, you know, there's been this like emergence of the popularity of doing shadow work. lately in the personal development world, and like that's positive, but like I think there's also this thing that people do where they're like, oh, you got to do the shadow work, but it's like telling someone else to do shadow work is literally the opposite of shadow work. Because it's
Probably
the
their
whole
shadow.
idea. Yeah, the whole idea behind shadow work is that like you are examining what makes you uncomfortable, what makes you tick, what are you hiding from yourself and the world. And like my relationship with Jason, I think we have such a good rapport is because like we're both curious towards that as opposed to afraid of it. It's like, oh, there's this really dark, possibly fucked up thing. Like, this will make a great story in the morning. As opposed, and I think it's not just us with each other. That's like independently that's like aspects of our personalities.
If either one of us could remember what it was the next
right.
day.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's also like oh, this thing was really scary. Wait, what were we talking about? Squirrel, like thing going on. You know, like I was really freaked out about this thing that came up in my shadow, but then I saw a squirrel and now I'm distracted.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a certain amount of playfulness I like to have, and then I have to rein it in because it is still, I mean, you know, people pay me for specified outcomes in the beginning of our work together, and I have to track those. And you know, outcomes, and I only work with people for 6 or 7 months at a time. And then, you know, what will their evidence be? What's been stopping them? Like that's a very detailed, you know, outcome illustration in the beginning. So I have to track those in the back of my mind all the time. Like I've never liked people in the helping industries. You know, I don't like the word coach, and I'm definitely not a coach. I've been an evolutionary guide because I help people move through the spiral more rapidly for, you know, 16 years now, over 500 clients. So I have to over 500 clients through customized one-on-one programs in that amount of time. So I have, and I, you know, so, and I have to expand, and I have stretched her a little too far. I think twice
with
in
me?
4 months. Yeah, I think.
Oh yeah,
I think.
We
we don't even talk
my
about
boundaries. That's how I view it.
Well, it wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Okay.
There was an awareness there.
I don't know about. So I tried to push her too quickly on a couple of things, right. So I had to recalibrate. You know, it wasn't because of all the things that go on out there. It wasn't a boundary violation so much as a pushing of the envelope too quickly.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, the problem with that, and the problem, you know, I have in my just in general, I have been told I haven't been invited to certain things like weddings, or because they're like, well, we never quite know what you.
How did you get in here?
No. More like you're really fun, and here's why we're not going to invite you to this thing.
Okay.
That, you know, you probably should be at, but we're not sure how the other people will handle you. And I kind of care about that, you know, because I don't personally care. I don't take it personally. I do care about my results, but also sometimes I don't care. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I mean, I do deeply. I care about being effective, but you know, really, life should be play. It should be, and people are so, you know, to Scout's point, they're just too wrapped up in how it's supposed to be, or how it should be, or how it, you know, and they have a fixation or an identification with that, rather than holding it and having a lot of flexibility around it. Or, well, like you and I, before she got on the call, you and I, Layman, we talked about, you know, people being identified, like letting a cloudy day upset them. Right. And I think it's the same thing. And only now people who think they're not imposed, like people who are anti-religion, still have a moral framework that they're imposing onto people in a lot of ways. So they're not allowing people the freedom to be. And there's just not there's a lack of personal freedom in the community too. A lack of like, all right, cool. Here's the framework I'm coming from. Here's my model of the world, but I am not that model of the world. And when you see someone going to the fucking bat over 1 + 1 = 2 or not, I'm like, wow, like friendships ended that day. You know, it's like, it's so weird. And so just
Friendships ended
like
that day.
they did. I watched it happen.
And
Like,
the
you know,
fall
I
of
used to
Rome
like,
commenced.
dude, seriously, if you go into the Facebook group for the Integral community, Integral Global, I think, and if you
I'm
just
not
look up,
interested.
just search 1+1 = 2. I shit you not. Like Corey had to put out a whole edict about how we're supposed to interact with each other in the group after that. It was insane. Do you remember this, Layman? Were you in there?
I was
right?
on there. I mean, I have a position in that fight.
Oh no!
But I'm not terribly worried about asserting it because my position is a position about how both sides are correct. So usually I can't get anywhere in terms of getting an argument about that. But I remember when it occurred.
Layman does 1+1 = 2.
Yeah. Almost. That's the metaphysics of adjacency.
So I have it that 1+1 always equals 2, but I have it that 1+1 always equals 2, but our experience of the equation might be different.
Yeah, and I think that's an appropriate way of viewing it through the lens of different quadrants.
Right.
When it comes to the metaphysics of reality, I tend to think that
How much
there's a
acid are
difference
you on right
between
now, Layman?
absolute and maximal. 1+1 doesn't absolutely equal to it. But it equals to more than any other thing can equal to.
So 2 hits of acid, you're on 2 hits of acid right
Yeah,
now.
I'm on 2 hits of acid right now. Okay. Hey, Scout, Jason was talking about his feeling, personally and professionally, perhaps, about having on a couple of occasions pushed you too far too fast, and you were chuckling about it as boundary testing. So my question is, how do you move forward from that? What was that like for you to go from whatever intensity that was to the way you feel about it now?
Well, first of all, I do want to clarify, and thank you, Jason, for mentioning this. People assume that like a boundary is like a thing,
some sort of sexual misconduct.
Yeah, like a boundary is like this like, oh, he like, if you push a boundary or if you cross a boundary, then like the other person is traumatized. Like, I don't want to be victimized in this scenario, and I don't want Jason to be villainized. So when I said like we were exploring my boundaries, like what I talk about is like boundaries of self, like boundaries of self-definition. And so like in the personal evolution program with Jason, what we're really like my approach to it and like what I'm wanting with like my outcomes and what he's guiding me towards is like, who am I supposed to be in the context of like my existence in the world? Like that's what I'm wanting to evolve in myself, because like I know who I am. I'm fairly confident in like, you know, and like generally have a positive disposition as a person. Where I struggle,
and she's radically self-aware, by the way.
It's a gift and a curse. But where I struggle is where do I belong? Like where do I take all of this like that I have to offer? Because I, you know, I'm aware of like my value, but I'm not aware of like where that value is needed necessarily. And so like when I talk about we're exploring my boundaries, we're talking about, okay, where do I end and where does this other thing begin? You know? And so like when we talk about, you know, certain things about myself and my personality that can be challenging, and one of those things was like relationship and like how do I relate to a specific person, and that was because it was relationship. That's a context in life where your boundaries expand or contract, or they dissolve, they get weak or they get stronger, because it's, you know, there's no relationship without boundaries. If I'm not like a separate person, I can't relate to a separate person as a separate person. And that is something that I struggle with. And so we were kind of exploring, okay, what's the line here of like what I can comfortably stretch myself to achieve? Like, can I be fully, completely honest? Can I like go to this level? And like Jason and I are very different, I think, in how we, correct me if I'm wrong, this might be an assumption, but this is just based on conversations that we've had, Jason. Like I need things to develop more slowly. Whereas like you are like very open immediately with people. You're very like, this is who I am. Like, I need to know who you are so that we like, are we a fit or not? And it's very like fast the way that you approach it. And it's not necessarily anything like wrong with that. It's just something I'm less comfortable with. I prefer things to be like one tiny step at a time. Like I can really only reveal myself to you like in a very slow, long-term way. Like that feels safer for me. And so where we were challenged in this particular context of what we're talking about, where my boundaries were stretched or whatever, was like me sort of taking a faster approach than I was more comfortable with. And we didn't know that that was sort of like an edge for me until we tried it. And that's sort of the thing that, like, you know, that's one of the sort of shadow aspects of play, is that sometimes you have two kids on the playground play fighting, one of them hits the other one a little too hard, and then you have a real fight, but you didn't know it was going to become a real fight until it became one. Does that make sense?
We didn't fight, to be clear. So a couple
we
things.
did not fight.
A couple.
We were fine.
We'll work on metaphors.
Don't
later.
call the cops.
No, there was no. So I've had.
Fine
I can count the number of actual interpersonal conflicts I've had with clients. Again, over 500 of them over 16 years on one hand, and usually, you know. So Layman asked, "How do you move on from that?" And I want to get to that. But just a couple of points of clarification. One is, so as part of it's just language, and I want to, make sure I clarify a couple of things. Like I would have referred to it as limitations, but I held back on using that word earlier. And she's talking about boundaries. But she also, I love the look. Wait a minute. It's fantastic. Could you do it a little bit more like, could you, and it goes with the, yeah, but also down, but also
a little further.
So like, yeah, man. Yeah. By the way, what kind of flower is that in your ear?
It's plastic. It came off this plastic plant. It was on the floor.
What is it a plastic representation of then?
It's hard. It's a 5-petaled white flower of some kind. There's two of
them.
And
if you could have a real flower behind your ear, what kind of flower would that be, Layman?
A chrysanthemum, Jason.
It took you no time to answer that.
I too like 4-syllable flowers.
Yeah, I know. I went mostly with the name. I can't even visually picture a chrysanthemum.
I don't even know what it is, actually.
They have like a jillion petals, and they're usually somewhat magenta.
If I had to go with something I can picture, I would go with a white rose.
I buy roses for myself all the time. Anyway, I was when she said boundaries, and I think I'm trying to blend. I just want people to understand. I was pushing against the limits of who she thought she was.
Right.
And I did it too quickly. I was trying to have her expand out. Now, what she said, like, I'm just that way. I'm not that way. I've been consciously developing myself for 30 years. And so there's a lot of just like, this is who I am. I'm okay with who I am. If you're okay with who I am too, then we can, especially in dating, like and most women find it incredibly refreshing. They're like, wow, this is great. If they don't, then I know it's not a fit. Like, it wasn't like I shouldn't have said that. It's okay. It's totally not a fit. That's cool too. But how we moved on from it was I apologized. Like the next day I was like, I'm really sorry. I pushed you too quickly. And I think it's not like it isn't. I have an orientation to my results with clients. It's about, I'm responsible. I'm actually more responsible for the results of every interaction in communication more than anybody else, because I have 30 years of development. It's not like an ego thing. It's almost like a fuck. I'm going to have to take I had a tense moment in a friendship where I was like, you know what? I get it. I'm going to take any responsibility here. And I said it out loud. And then that sort of snapped them. Like they were in blame mode. And I was like, it's not fucking, and it's not my fault, but I'm going to take responsibility here because it'll help their relationship. And it's sort of it's a grit my teeth moment. Now with Scout, I was like, yeah, I fucked up there. I miscalibrated what she could handle. I think it sent her into tears later on. Like she was like, she had to call somebody else for support. And I was like, oh, I didn't like, I was like, and I was kind of having fun. And so, how we moved on, or the beginning, and it could be that there was nothing for her to move on from. She processed it well, but I have it that the way to move on from anything is to take responsibility. And so The next day I was like, hey, I get that I, pushed you too far on the time. And it was just the timing of it. It wasn't that she didn't want to do the thing. It was the pace, like she said. But also, 30 years of personal development gets you a few things. One is I basically fear nothing except for, jumping out of an airplane or being attacked by a bear. No,
we could work on those.
That could be fun. I mean,
we could definitely
if I got away.
Impulsive balancing, you say.
Yeah. And I just want to add to.
I want to live on a boat, but I don't even know how to swim. I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
I want to add to that, like, there wasn't really anything to move on from because there wasn't like irreparable damage done to me as a result of like sort of being challenged in that way. It was just, it helped me become aware of something that I just have a preference for. It was like, not like, oh, I can't do this. It was like, I had like rational reasons. It wasn't fully a fear-based response. There was a fear-based response involved. But like, as I processed through the fear-based response I was like, oh, actually I had rational reasons for why I want this to take longer, and it wasn't like, I'm not doing this, as he said. It was like, I just need more time because I want to do this a specific way because like, I want to. We're
probably making it sound worse than it is by explaining how not problematic it was.
I know, right? Well, I just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about.
Right.
Oh my God!
Do you want me to be
I
open
heard Jason.
about it?
I heard Jason violates boundaries.
Basically, he was encouraging me to talk about my feelings that I had towards a person, and I was like,
yeah.
All right,
I went into like 12-year-old mode.
Let's pivot to memes. I got some thoughts about memes because I see the two of you. One thing you have in common is in social media space, you bat around memes. And lately, I've liked the orgiastic mutant image of the Disney princesses, and I like Piglet looking for Eeyore while Winnie the Pooh clearly has him in the crawl space. And
that's one of my personal favorites.
So here's my question:
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, what are you looking for in a meme when you come across something? What is it about that thing that make you go, "Yeah, I got to post this"?
Scout, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. That's a very interesting question, Layman. It's not something I really am conscious of, so I'm excited to explore it. It is going to be a shit show, just so you know, because we're exploring it in real time together. So I guess like growing up in like the sort of postmodern context gives you kind of an absurdist quality to your like the way that you process and receive information, because postmodernism is a lot of it. Postmodern thinking is influenced by trying to reconcile paradox and not being able to, and that's sort of where the dark side of it, the nihilism, can come in. But on like the upside, there's this way of like non-absolutist way of being like, I can't reject this just because it doesn't make sense. And so how that's affected me, and I mean, meme culture is just something that like I'm a part of. It's like an age thing. But what I really appreciate about memes is like how they can transfer information, like, and concepts in like a very quick way. So I guess like what I look for in a meme is like, is this going to challenge people's perceptions? Or is this going to inform someone about something they might not know much about in a way that's so easily received? Like I could post an article and it's like, who's going to read it? Like most people are not going to read it, especially if it's longer than 8 minutes, because that people's attention spans are just like rapidly deteriorating. And like, I think the last meme I posted, I saw the Disney princess one, and it's like it gets worse the longer you look at it. And it's like that doesn't really mean anything.
Awesome.
it just takes you to the uncanny valley without like really. It's like, this is bad.
It's so
but
good.
Then you're like, oh, I gotta look at it now because it's bad. Yeah. Definitely.
You should put the meme in the cover art.
Yeah. We'll see if we can edit that in.
I should. Yeah.
So for me, it's far more. In a way, it's far more calculated, and also far more. It's just me being myself. So I figured out a while ago, and I've actually explicitly, I created a post on Facebook about why I do what I do and the pattern, and it's all marketing. It's a marketing strategy. Make people laugh, make people laugh, make people laugh. Slam in the face with depth. Make people laugh, make people laugh, make people laugh. Slam in the face with depth. So I kind of entertain them so that they'll be like, oh, it's really, and then they'll be like, oh shit. So part of it is they don't see it coming. Part of it is, have you ever had that person you're just like, oh, I can't handle them that day? I don't think anybody does that with mine. Like, and there are people who only do marketing posts. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make you laugh. Like, you're going to have fun. And I'm going to talk about some really deep shit. And I have like a 4-to-1 strategy. It's like there's like a 4 memes, one. And so, but I just like, it's the way I spend my, I just spend my time on Imager, imgur.com. Like, I spend a lot of time there, and it's my way of decompressing. But I'm like, oh, this will be useful. Oh, this will be funny. But also the algorithm. So like, instead of posting a link to an article I wrote on my blog and having it be the image from the blog, Facebook's algorithm is more, and same thing with Instagram. The algorithm is more like, more people will see it if it's an image and then also a link to the website. But if it's just a link to the website, fewer people see it. So it just the algorithm got me to start using memes as a way to like, if I'm going to post a deep thing, sometimes I also include a meme. Sometimes it's customized, sometimes it's not. The most recent one was like, how dare you, which was a deeply personal share. It was a cart. It was like what was it? Like almost looked like a detective
painting. The artist Lichtenstein used to do those big painting versions of like comic book frames.
I don't. You know why?
Okay. Why?
I'm horribly uncultured. I'm also functionally illiterate, so I can't read or write.
That's weird, because that's the vibe about you that I had.
I am a high school dropout.
Oh, okay.
Proud of it. I didn't go to college. I went to prison instead. But
you finish off. I got another thing in mind for next.
All right, cool. But the reason I use memes is because it translates more in our, like everything that Scout said, but also it's an intentional marketing strategy. And, if I can incorporate, and by the way, part of it is I completely ripped off Chris Orozco, who I think he led a marketing class on how to use memes. And I was like, dude, I've been watching you. I don't need to pay for your class. But I never steal his memes. I'm like, oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. I should do that thing, which I think is, like, we're humans are natural modelers. Anyway, that's why. But for me, it's an intentional marketing strategy.
That reminds me of like driving past churches and they put like what they think is a funny joke on the sign to try to get you in.
And it's not.
It never is.
I saw one this morning that said to enter heaven, you have to let Jesus enter you. And I was like, but this isn't a Catholic church sign.
Yeah.
It should be a Catholic.
Are they aware of the irony?
Sorry. Was that
too
soon?
Speaking of odd entries, here's my little anecdote. Okay, I was a kid and I'd get my hands on pornography in magazines. I was probably the last wave of people who could do that. And you get like, you have a section you love, and then you try other sections, you get bored of them, and then you end up in like the weird stuff at the back. And then I would go through the weird stuff at the back and I would be like, oh my God, there's people who are getting enjoyment from things that I'm not disposed towards. And I was angry. I was jealous of them. It made me upset that anybody else was enjoying anything I wasn't. So I would try to masturbate to things that I didn't find exciting. And it didn't really work. I was like, why is somebody else enjoying gay porn and I'm not enjoying it? So I would try, and yet my body wouldn't respond. And so I was forced to conclude that I'm straight. And my question, this is the lead in. The question is, what do experimental reversals of sexual and gender roles teach us about who we are authentically?
because I think you guys
Yeah.
both have a take on sexual and gender reversal. Or at
Well,
least
my
the
understanding
play of
is that Scout has some experience. Of my understanding, she's also a virgin, aren't you, Scout? You're a virgin, right?
I'm actually just gay.
Oh, okay. All right. Whatever. So, got that one wrong.
Right. I'm a gay virgin.
So to his point,
As in I've never
how do you
had,
know?
I'm a gay virgin as in I've never had gay sex. That's what I meant by gay virgin.
Did you say version or virgin?
Virgin.
And which version are we talking about? Anyway, so oh my gosh. So first of all, I want to address like halfway through your lead in. This is amazing, by the way. Layman, you're gonna love this. You're gonna and I think we could end with Scout because there's a there's a thing that I don't know I can talk about, but
yeah, talk about it.
So two things. First of all, if you ever want to be terrified immediately, look up there's a dildo company called Square Pegs. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
Oh, I want to be terrified immediately.
It's the weird shit in the back of the magazine. I was like,
There we go.
fuck, like what the fuck? So the other thing is, my wife and I were involved in the fetish community back when I was married. I've been divorced for 17 or 18 years now. But like 20 years ago, we knew the owners of the Power Exchange in San Francisco, the Pansexual Fetish Club. And we had basically the manager's discount at Mr. S and Mrs. S, leather and fetter. Like and the first time my wife and I walked in to Mr. S, we like looked around and went, holy fuck. And we like darted out like, ah! People are into that, right? But we went back. And we were like, you looking around, sort of like, giggly. I was like 35, 33, something like that. And, we're like looking around and we're teeter like, and, within a month or two, they would just give us a manager's discount because we would spend $1,000 every time we were there. And we got to explore all the things we liked and didn't like. And I think one of the, to the meat of your question, unless you explore all the things, you don't know if you like it or not. And first, like whether it's there was a period of my life where I consider myself a desire concierge. If a woman had a fantasy, I was like, great, let's make that happen for you. And because I offered a shame-free experience for whatever sexual fantasy they had, and I'd be like, okay, great. Would you like to experience that? And then I would help facilitate it. So I actually called myself a desire concierge for a bit for my lovers, not like by the way, I am stunningly not promiscuous. Like I burned through that in my mid-20s. I'm very discerning, very selective.
Hashtag desire concierge, hashtag stunningly not promiscuous.
Well, a lot of people so I learned a long time ago that people project onto me what they would be doing in my body with my skills, and I'm like, I have to be aligned with a woman, like cognitively, spiritually, mentally, sexually. And I have to like, and I tried all the things. I have tried all the things a human could try, except for, animals and things that are illegal. Like I haven't tried anything but between consenting adults, I have attempted all dynamics and found out what I liked and what I didn't like. And there are things I like and don't like. And I'm really clear. And I've had people be like, well, I'm like, yeah, I tried that. Doesn't get my cock hard. I'm sorry. I like really feminine, petite women. I like them, like if I'm attracted to a woman, my first question is, how tall are you? Because I want her head to be right here when we're cuddling. Like I'm, 6 foot. I like a woman between 5'1" and 5'5". It's like, it's because of the way we fit together, cuddling sexually, there's just a masculine feminine dynamic that I like there. But I tried all sorts of things. But guess what? A woman who's 5'10", cock doesn't get hard. Woman who's 5'2", so and a lot of people are like, well, why do you like that? I'm like, who gives a fuck? Like there's this chatter in their head, like, well, I shouldn't, blah, 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 blah. Or if you want to, whether it's about a sexual fantasy or a fetish it's like, hey, if you like it, you like it. There's no need to psychoanalyze anything. It's like, well, what happened in my childhood that has me like that? Who cares? It turns you on. Do it. Or it doesn't turn you on. So don't do it. Like, it's really stunningly straightforward. And I think there's a layer in between people's self-acceptance with this thing turns me on. And they're either their judgments for themselves or their fear that if they share the thing, then the person won't like them. And this is where I feel compelled to bring up Julia Diallo. Did we talk about Julia Diallo in our?
I don't think so. Pray continue.
Layman's over there going, keep going.
Yeah. What about Julia Diallo?
Let me loosen my belt.
Good Lord.
So I was like 23, 24, dating this like just amazing Italian goddess. She was running her parents' restaurant since she was 15, bilingual, and like found me at the restaurant I was working for and gave me her phone number. Was like, you better call me. And I was like, great. We did it for like 2 months, but the chemistry was just always off. Even though I was like, oh my gosh, like who wouldn't want this woman, right? There was just something always off about the chemistry. So we stopped dating because it was just milk toast with a Q for anybody who wants to. Milk toast is one of my favorite words this month. And so we were talking on the phone a couple months later, and somehow anal sex came up, and she said, you like that? And I go, yeah, totally. I love it. And she goes, I prefer it, but my last boyfriend made me feel dirty because I wanted to do it. And I was like, well, that's a teaching moment for me. Like, better bring up anal sex with everyone. I'm like, just to see their response over coffee. You don't want to do it in the bedroom because then they feel pressure, but like, and that's also just to see how their thoughts are about it. Scout in the McClain Unfiltered group. Was it Melissa? Like, she had a whole thing. Like I said, I made a post about anal sex and she's like, something about scat. I was like, oh my God, no, there's a 2-hour McClain cleansing system that goes along with that. Because people, well, I mean, I make sure they have everything they need. Yeah.
All right, Scout. Sexual and gender reversals and identity play.
All right.
Moving on.
But point taken, Jason. I will bring up anal sex over coffee as an icebreaker to test where people are at.
Not what I said.
No,
but
yeah,
but sure. I mean, I wouldn't lead with that. Like, wait till like
second or third question.
Well, yeah, or coffee cup half. Yeah, second or third.
Half a coffee cup in. All right.
Jesus.
No, for real though. There's nothing more intimate than anal sex in the missionary position, eye to eye, because a woman has to she has to be so open. And so missionary position for anal sex is amazing, and it is incredibly intimate.
All right. I hope our readers and watchers are taking notes at this point.
You seem like you're tiring of this conversation.
Well, I just want to segue over to Scout.
You're adjusting yourself in the chairs.
That's not you. That's my legs. I'm cross-legged in a chair, so every so many minutes I got to switch the legs.
Okay. I'm like, Layman, is your butthole?
I just want to make sure you were. I think he's feeling wiggly.
I'm just feeling like a hot, spicy tingle in the anus as you talk, Jason.
Yeah, a little wiggly in your chair. Yeah.
That's probably my Kundalini.
You want to check in with your butthole real quick before we move on?
Okay.
Scout,
do you
heard me?
Context of the question and or have anything?
Not at all.
No, well, you have more.
Hit me a second time.
Well, no. So his question. So
yeah.
You've got a play of gender reversals that's very explicit.
Oh, yeah. Well, my take on this is very So I've noticed the interpretations, and this on my part could do with like trouble refining the actual experience and what I learned from it. But I've noticed that like when I try to communicate my perspective, I get either people think that I am rejecting sex, biological sex, and the binary of masculine and feminine altogether, or I'm an absolutist in regards to gender binary. And like, I'm glad you asked me this question because I'm still trying to refine this sort of how I communicate this perspective. But basically what I have it that like all roles are not available to all people. And like for me, because of my experiences, I have more roles available to me. But because I have more roles available to me, I have more responsibility to choose the ones that I embody, because you obviously can't embody all of them. So like, do I want to play the role of a man in society? No, I do not. Could I? Yes. Have I? I've tried. And I did experiment with that and realized that it was wrong for me. And that does in part have to do with the nature of my biology. But it also has to do in part with the nature of what I desire to experience in my life. And so there's layers to it there. I would say that like what Jason's saying in regards to like, he's, experimented with a lot of different things, and that taught him what he likes and what he wants to experience. So like learning through contrast, I think that's another thing that we have in common, I think, is like the desire to learn through contrast and to kind of like play in the realm of like discomfort, or the realm of like, oh, this is like an opposition, because that's, I think, ultimately what integration is about. Like if I didn't try to be as masculine as possible, I might not understand that perspective on the world or that experience of the world as well as I do now. And I feel like I understand it really well now as a result of trying to be it and realizing that I wasn't it. And I understand how I'm different from it and in what ways I'm different from it. And then I can relate to it in a really exquisite way now from like the other side of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that speaks very directly.
Did you change your head thing?
I did.
Are you Scout? Do you have it on gallery view or
I
on? Okay, yeah.
I think this kind of looks like a halo from medieval painting.
Or like
I was thinking of. I'm sorry. I thought you were like, the whole like butthole tingly thing. I thought you're like, and here's my hat to prove it. Whoa.
Yeah.
No.
Case in point.
No. Open it back up.
Yeah, like open it up.
If
my head was my anus, these would be the radiating lines of etheric force.
Oh my gosh. So I think we could. This has been really fun. I think we could actually do a whole talk on gender identification, but also the role in society, and also, and we could bring spiral dynamics into it. And then, my whole thing about, I've even had people not like, I showed up at a Zoom call. Some woman contacted me and was like, hey, would you be part of a panel? And I don't remember what it was, but I was like, yeah, I would love to be on that panel. And then we had a pre-call Zoom call, like a pre-panel Zoom call, where she's like, you need to put your pronouns on the screen. I'm like, no, I don't. And she goes, yeah, you do. It's just, it's disrespect. I'm like, hey, well then I'm going to put he/she/it. And she goes, that'll be fine. And I was like, oh my God. Like, do you realize how stupid it is that you're actually it's a moral framework thing. Like, oh, you have to, I'm like, but, and it reminds me, I did landmark education, like 1999, the curriculum for living. So I went to the forum and the advanced course, and a client of mine decided on their own because I rarely recommend it, because most people who come to me don't need it. Like my work's more advanced. They have those basics down. But I came in a suit. It's there for the graduation night, and they're like, you got to put on a name tag. I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, yeah, you do. I'm like, well, I'm standing for the and this, I'm using landmark language, right? I'm like, I'm gonna stand for the possibility that I can go in there without a name tag. And they're like, oh, fuck, this motherfucker's using our own. And they're like, well, that's not the game we're playing here, which is also, I was like, nice. I was like, well, then write Susan on it. And she goes, okay. And she seemed relieved that I was just not gonna fuck with her any further. And so I walk in a suit with Susan. Like, it's so stupid. It's like, well, there's a rule and we gotta do the rule. And as long as you like, so you know what I did the minute I got in there? I took off the name tag and I just stood in the back looking like I was assessing everybody. like, come on. Don't make, like, at least understand the purpose of the rule. Like,
yes.
You know.
Yeah. Well said. Really well said.
There's a degree of self-comfort and orientation toward developing self-comfort that you both seem to share. And I guess my question is, healthy self-esteem,
I just want people to be
do you
free.
have any? And if so, where did you get it?
On the dark web, obviously. I fucking know a guy, all right?
On the dark web. Oh my god. Oh, that was so fucking good. Oh, I can't top that humor wise.
I bet you can.
No, I don't think I could. Like, as a punchline, no. You like, that is amazing. So I think it's yeah, man, totally, like, totally tip of the hat. Jesus Christ, that was amazing.
Cool.
So my solo live stream next Tuesday. Well, I don't know when this will go to, so I don't know that they'll know, but I'm doing a live stream. You know, like you guys will, fucking dates are relative. So anyway, my next live stream, we're doing a live stream today with Justice Bartlett on, you know, entering a relationship consciously, some of the things that Scout talked about, and, you know, like, why, like, the whole I'm entering a relationship to heal and be healed, I think is so unhealthy. And I'm calling it transformational codependence. But the thing I'm doing next week is the role of self-esteem in relationships. I mean, it's just so critical. And I have loosely tied it to ego development, like, you know, low self-esteem, pre-rational ego, high self-esteem, like, you know, and like, it's not precise, but it works loosely. And there's just degrees of increasing freedom, self-acceptance, and there's really two so I just have it. You can't have a healthy relationship without really high self-esteem. But what does that mean? And self-esteem for me, you know, so knowledge of your competence is one component. And this is straight from Nathaniel Brannon and the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. The second, and some of my extrapolations on it. I've met him a couple of times, you know, before he died 2 years ago, I think, or 3 years ago. Lovely man. We never talked about self-esteem, but I got into his work and extrapolated it out. I always bought him a cocktail after he liked one single screwdriver, vodka and orange juice, after he did talks. So twice he was in San Francisco, and I was like, let me buy you a screwdriver. He's like, great. Then he would have one, and then he would, you know, leave. And we, you know, that one was a half-hour conversation. The second component is self-respect or self-acceptance. And, you know, in that first component, like, you know, knowing that you're competent to handle whatever life throws at you, but in any context, it might be that knowing that you're competent to communicate your needs, or that you're competent to have the capacity to, there's all sorts of relational things that occur, and knowledge of your competence of that. Like, hey, and as if you follow me for any period of time, you know, I beat the drum of communication skills or physical skills. It's because you need to know that you're competent in them, to be able to comfortably do that. Like, I should say that, and however it goes, it'll be fine, because I've navigated these conversations before and got through the sticking points and like that. But the other component, which like, and so that's a build through time, like historical references, knowledge of your comment, not a belief or a affirmation but historical references. But the second component really is about self-acceptance and self-respect. And that's really just accepting that you are a manifestation of the divine, that you are worthy of good things, that you deserve, you're worthy of receiving. So it shows up in money, shows up in love, it shows up in all sorts of things. Like, I can receive that, a compliment, help, money for my a service I'm providing, somebody just loving me, and not going like, well, do I deserve that or not? Like, something I said a while ago, if somebody says they don't feel like they deserve you, you should believe them, because they won't be worthy of receiving, like they won't receive your love because they don't feel they're worthy of it. And that's a battle I've only struggled with once, because I fell in love with a woman very rapidly. And the next 3 years is me trying to, and she did leave feeling like she was, she acknowledges that her self-esteem was massively increased after our relationship. But I was like, maybe if I'd hung around for another year or two, it would have finally gotten to the point where she could receive things. But I was like, I'm not there to heal her. And so, the tricky thing about the second component of self-esteem is that you just have to accept it. Like, it's like you're worthy. You're worthy of good things, no matter what somebody told you or didn't tell you. You're worthy. Everybody's worthy of a fulfilling relationship. That's the worthiness part. Now, the competence part, there are different skills. Like, there's skills in dating, there's skills in how to start a relationship, there's skills in how to keep a relationship going, there's skills and capacities in how to end it and grieve and all those things. But there's no quick answer on self-esteem. It's a developmental process, and it's a spectrum, and I also have it's a victim to hero or heroine spectrum. And that's actually part of the conversation I'd like to have around the transgender community. And if I am at the mercy of how other people think of me for my happiness, like you and I, when we're talking about the weather, it's a very similar thing. Like, if I have externalized my happiness to somebody else, I'm giving all my power away.
Just hearing about the idea that we're worthy makes me feel a little bit more worthy. How about you, Scout?
Oh, I have like an interesting, somewhat counter, but not quite fully counter perspective to that.
Awesome. I'm about to learn something. Go ahead.
Yeah. So part of my tool belt in sort of developing self-esteem has been working with Jason, obviously. Or if that wasn't obvious at this point, now it is. So great. Either way, it's obvious now.
It's not even obvious to me, but
okay. Well, now you know. Haven't you been paying attention? Sorry. No, you haven't.
Wait.
Because you have ADHD.
What day is it?
Hey, Scout, are you coming to the thing that we scheduled?
Oh.
Fuck.
Dude, do you know how often I walk into
no, I should probably answer Layman's question.
Give it a shot.
So I stumbled upon this framework called existential kink at one point, and it's a way of shadow work of basically saying like, oh, here's this thing that I hate that's incredibly painful. I'm going to enjoy it. And that has helped me a lot with self-esteem because and Jason has seen me doing this where I do this thing where I shit talk myself publicly. And what it does is actually gives people the freedom to enjoy the things they don't like about themselves and not like them and have that be a pleasurable experience. And so part of what's helped me with my attachment issues and like in relationships is like, let's laugh about this like thing that I do that like comes from this, like we could like be like, oh, traumatic, and like we'll heal this like thing. And then like coming from the healing perspective towards it, there's like a mentality for most people that there's a belief that it's like you're inherently broken. But like, what if I'm just inherently human? Like, what if this like avoidant nature that I have towards relationships is like not only has a benefit to it, you know, or I guess like in NLP terms has a positive intention behind it. Like, what if I was just a robot, right? And I have programs, and then my programs make me do things, and the programs are like not good or bad. They're either ineffective or they're effective depending on like what I want to accomplish with them. And so like viewing it from that way of like, oh, isn't it like really hilarious that like when someone likes me, I like run away from them? Actually, it is hilarious. And it's like, yeah, I do that because like there are these issues underlying it, and like those are funny to me. Like I think that those are funny quirks that are about my personality, and like as I view them in this more neutralized way, it's like, you know what, maybe I could play with trying to avoid less, or like trying to be more open, or trying to intellectualize my emotions less so that I can actually have space for that part of myself, you know, because it feels accepted now. It's like, oh, thank you for appreciating the defense mechanism that I created to help you survive. Like, thank you for seeing the value in that, you know? So the self-worth thing is like a layer that like I've had to work on, but the way that I've like worked through that is like the parts of me that feel unworthy not because we are unworthy, but because believing that we are was beneficial at some point. And so thank you for doing that, self. Like, thank you for creating that narrative that helped me survive. And like, it's like I'm reading a book, you know, and you don't hate the character, you don't love the character, you experience the character and you learn something from that experience.
Character and personality and self-acceptance and self-esteem, they have this interesting domain where this like the domain of who you are as a unique individual. And sometimes we talk about, well, you can do therapy and get more comfortable with that. But on the other hand, your real spiritual existential development is this ladder of progressive impersonal experience. Do you think that's true? Or do you think we've exaggerated the degree to which spiritual and existential development proceeds towards something impersonal rather than something even more deeply personal?
Totally agree with everything you said.
All
By the
right.
way, do you also have a pink light or a purple light in addition to all the purple
No, it's the
reflective things you
lens
got
on this
going
HD camera I got.
Dude, it
Like
is
this,
fucking...
a lot of these things that look blue, like I got this too.
No, I mean, even
This-
your face. Even
Yeah, I
your
know. It's
face
all
is
like this hat is black, but it looks blue on here to me.
I'm really
because
glad
there's
you got that
something
really
tinting the
expensive
lens on the
purple
camera.
camera.
Yeah. Like I can I'm gonna switch
Anyway,
to the laptop camera. Check this out.
No, man. I don't know. Don't.
Right? That's the
Whoa.
laptop camera.
That's like, wow. That's actually. Do you feel cheated by the HD camera?
I like its depth and resolution, but I feel like
Dude,
it
it
traps
is
me in a
seriously-
slightly lavender Bardo realm.
I've been trying to avoid the acid flashback this whole time.
I feel like David Lynch is filming this.
Or I thought, you know, that's a good one. Or I thought, you know, maybe it's Pride Month and he just wants to be pink.
There we go.
So there's a lot to unpack in what Scout just said. There's a lot I agree with. I don't want to step over that. I forgot about the existential kink thing. I remember we had a brief conversation about that. And there's lots of good things to explore there. You know, the thing about worthiness is so weird. Like there's a, you know, here's the thing about
transactional.
What? I'm going to wholeheartedly disagree with that. And I
Okay.
really do that.
Okay.
So my apologies for being that blunt, and I rarely do that kind of thing. In fact, I spent a great deal of time just now saying I agree with a lot of the things you said. There's a lot of
She just needs her bluntness to come a lot more slowly.
Jesus Christ. Oh man. I'm because if I was a 25-year-old white girl, I would say I'm offended for her. Sorry, that's a whole social political comment thing there that was bad. Nobody laughed at that. All right. Layman's like, should I laugh at I thought you just said mm-hmm. I mean, come
my
on.
inner 25-year-old white girl is crying.
Well, it wasn't because of the anal thing, because I never hurt anybody. Anyway, so the hold on. So self-esteem.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's such a pattern interrupt for me, Scout, when you're like, I'm
sorry.
like, it's just no, it's great. By the way, if you ever need to, interrupt my trance, that's the thing to do for some reason. Totally short circuits me. Yeah, totally. It'll be useful in some context at some time.
Worthiness.
No, I know what I want to say. It's
okay.
just no. I haven't lost my train of thought. I'm
got it.
Gathering them.
Don't.
Sorry. I don't want to disrupt the gathering. Please gather.
I'm really interested in this because this is a place where we disagree, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Could you both just be quiet?
I'm going to mute my mic.
Good Lord. So when my mother left my father and took me and my sister with her when I was 5 or 6. And when I was 7, I think my father came down, kidnapped us both back, and then filed for divorce. So I grew up with this monster. And I bring that up because like it's sort of, you can have a child that's loved, encouraged, always told they could do anything, and they grow up hating themselves, or vice versa. Or you can have a child who's, constantly terrorized and they somehow come out. And I think, to Layman says something about character. And I think there's a nature and nurture part to it. Like maybe part of my DNA was just like, I'm going to fucking survive this. I don't know. But my father used to say this thing all the time to me that I didn't even realize was hilarious or didn't even understand it until right before he committed suicide. And he and I hadn't talked probably, but he used to say, you're as worthless as tits on a bowl all the time. Right. And I was like, I don't, and and I think I was in my mid-20s before I was like, oh, it's actually funny. Like once I understood, I was like, all right, because a bowl doesn't have udders. So it's, like whatever. And so like the things he used to say to me all the time, it's the weird thing about self-esteem. So nobody can harm your self-esteem. It's just impossible, because at the end of the day, you have to accept, like, you're the decider, as George W. Bush would say. You're the authority and the author of your self-esteem. It's called self-esteem, not other esteem. So somebody could be like, you were shitty at that. And you have to be like, yeah, I guess you're right. Or you don't. You go like, well, no, I'd like to be more effective at that thing. And there's a personal practical, like I also like practical would be the efficacy, personal would be the worthiness. And a lot of people have them collapse. So like people who take feedback more difficult, have a difficult time with feedback, they're collapsing those two domains. And so like, there's no reason I should have the self-esteem I have, except I've lived through all these things. I'm like, yeah, I can go into any situation. I mean, I went to prison at 19 for stealing brand new sports cars off car lots, because I realized that some people are like, what did I go to prison for? And I survived my childhood in a way. I've navigated a bunch of situations I've been HIV positive for 20 years. Like my divorce horrifies women when I tell them the story. Like there's just a bunch of things I have navigated, made a bunch of money, lost it all after 9/11. And that I'm like, I can handle pretty much any situation. So no matter what happens, I'm like, it'll be fine. I'll navigate it. I'll figure it out. And you can't, like, there's no replacing the metal that gets created when you go through horrifying experiences, unless you have a victim mentality. And then that's the thing. But that's the efficacy part. The worthiness part, it's still sort of a mystery. Like, what has people stay in shitty relationships and think, well, this is the best I could do? Or because that's not a efficacy thing, unless they've never supported themselves financially and they're terrified to leave the relationship because, they're actually uncertain of their capacity to support themselves. And that's like the most fundamental. Like, can I do what I need to do to survive in the world? That's the most fundamental of I'm competent. My efficacy, like that. You guys can, I found my train of thought. You guys can turn your mics back on. I like our interaction. I just needed like 60 seconds. I was like, what the fuck?
Well, I have an inquiry, Jason, if you're willing to receive an inquiry.
What if I said no?
Then I would probably start crying because that's so offensive.
You had me until you said the offensive part.
Really? I had you?
a little bit. Yeah.
Really? Wow. Good.
Well, I've seen you cry a couple of times when.
Yeah. No, me crying is hilarious because like I just revert to a 3-year-old. And I'm like barely I'm just barely intelligible. Like when I talk, it's like.
So what
would this inquiry be if you asked it?
What's your question?
So like we're talking about worthiness, and like I have my hypothesis about worthiness being related to like relationships being transactional, which is not necessarily a negative thing, but like my inquiry, or I guess like that would be my answer to this inquiry, though it's not necessarily right.
Hold on until you get to transrational. All relationships are transactional. And you could even argue that a transrational is because I might hang out with you because of the joy of being with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, all relationship, like I had a friend who, and I think this is one of our last conversations. He's like, well, all relationships are transactional. I'm like, yeah, at rational, all relationships are transactional. Not all, like I might hang out with you just because I like you. Like,
right.
And so we could say that's transactional too, but I also, but there's also all this negativity around transactional, which I think started from like, hey, I sucked your put, like in the sexual communities, like, right. I did this thing for you. Now it's your turn. And there's which I don't like.
Right. Whatever. Well, I don't have a negative connotation for it necessarily. It's just like,
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the thousands of people that will listen to this.
Kind
of like my comments on Facebook. I'm not actually commenting for the person.
All right. Scout, continue.
Right. Yeah. So here's I guess I'll explain my perspective on it. Are you offended, Jason? You with the freaking microphone. Well, okay, so in order to be worthy of something, right? So when I think of worthiness, I think of like, I'm worthy of this relationship. It means that like I earned the right to receive love.
That's deserving.
So my inquiry.
That's different than worthy.
Oh,
deserving.
Would you be willing to clarify the distinction?
Deserving is I earned it. Worthy is just I feel, like that. Like one is so. Yeah, there's a lot of people. So I stopped using the word deserving in this context explicitly because I realized it created some problems 7 or 8 years ago. And I started talking about worthiness of receiving. It just like I accept that I'm worthy of this. Deserving is totally an I earned it thing. Absolutely. Which is the problem with using it in the context I'm using worthiness. Like that's the problem. Like you shouldn't have to earn, like somebody might just randomly love you. And you might be there was this girl I was attracted to. We had a couple of really connecty calls. I was going to fly down to San Francisco to meet her. And I was like, you're a dork. I love that. And she's like, are you negging me? I was like, what? Like, what the fuck are you talking about right now? She thought I was like, no, I find dorkiness attractive. She was also smoking hot, but she had like some dorky, like she was dorky. By the way, my opening line on my dating apps is I'm a dork with a great hairstylist. So like, it's not like first of all, she had to explain to me what negging was, because I didn't know, because I don't do shitty things. But it's so like, you shouldn't have to earn those things. Now, there's no such thing as unconditional love. There's a post, I think, that Damien wrote about love and conditions, and I think it was Damien, that I'm going to respond to. I have a bunch of saved posts I need to respond to. But that's the problem with using deserving versus worthy in that context. All
right. So now that we've teased that concept
aspect
apart into like, one is a justified worth, and the other is either an intrinsically unjustified or self-justified worthiness of some kind. Now, where are you going given that distinction, Scout?
Well, I think I'm still confused on the distinction, because like if worthiness and deserving are distinct from one another, and you did define deserving, but I am still a little bit unclear on the definition of worthiness. Like what
well, if you tie it to simply self-acceptance.
Okay.
I went into a great deal of detail around what that meant probably 20 minutes
earlier.
ago.
Yeah. Okay.
And the problem is it's just accepting it. Like there isn't it's like an atmosphere. It's like something you open to, not a.
It's not something you accumulate.
Well, in that respect,
or
we're not,
achieve or do or.
We're not actually in disagreement in that respect.
I don't think we are, actually.
Yeah, I was conflating the two terms entirely. Like I was assuming self-worth had to do with deserving something, or like I can receive this and here's my reason. Whereas like, I guess I'm still willing to explain my perspective. I don't really think I need to, though, because it's basically the same as Jason's.
And I would almost slide deserving up into efficacy. Like, I actually think deserving is more like it's the I did this, therefore, like it's results based. It's like I think it's the other. Sure. I'm not sure that's well. Anyway.
Okay. All right. I rarely unfollow or unfriend people in social media, but when I do, there's definitely a pattern. It's almost never anybody who said anything that bothered me offensively. It's almost always somebody who said some insipidly superficial, faux, profound, positive thing that I couldn't handle and didn't want to hear any more of. Like a kitten poster version of Rumi or the Buddha or something like that. Yeah. So my query is, because like, I feel like that's bad perceptual food when I encounter it. It's ostensibly extremely positive. It references profound things, but it comes into me and it feels like I ate food with no nutrient or maybe even poison. So, two-part question. Who do you block online and why? And two, what do you think counts as good perceptual food as opposed to bad perceptual food?
Scout.
You want to go first? Okay. Well, I would say there's a way to sort of like frame. So there's a difference between like a platitude and like a genuine insight. And so like if someone is coming to me with insight, I'm normally more nourished by that, versus like if someone is coming to me with like, there's this sort of like, have you seen that? You've seen this meme where it's like a water like canister with a hole in it and it's like pouring out and this guy just slaps a sticker on it, like that's gonna solve the problem. That's what that is. Like you can feel the difference between when someone's doing that. Like I'm not comfortable with acknowledging discomfort or like darkness or anything that might put a wrench in my worldview that everything is perfect and divine, and that my conception of divinity is perfection and lack of suffering, when like my perspective of divinity is like everything that exists, including the fact that like my roommate saw a cricket on the wall and was going to try to save the cricket so that his dog wouldn't kill it, because his dog likes to kill crickets, and his dog immediately came up and ate the cricket. That's divinity to me. It's like the dog just fucking murdered the cricket for no other reason other than its bloodthirsty instincts. And then like someone comes over and slaps a spiritual platitude on that. Like, you're robbing me of the experience of being when you do that. And so like I can understand why that would feel malnourishing to you. I normally block people for just the reason of like, if I present a complex argument and you reduce it, and then I explain to you that you reduced it, and then like rather than like us having a mutual understanding and refinement of our perspectives due to the contrast between our perspectives, if you're just like, you're wrong, here's why, normally I'm like, well, you can just fuck off with that because I'm not learning anything here from you when you do that. I can sometimes be that person of like, oh, like I'll come in with like, here's what I feel is lacking from this perspective. I don't always do that in the most refined way because I'm a very emotional person. And sometimes I just go, rah! But I don't receive that well when other people do it to me. And I usually block those people. Other than that, I don't block people very often. I normally, you know, I have some people on my feed that offer me absolutely nothing, but I can tell that I offer something to them. And because I'm pretty self-resourced, other people receiving value from me and me not receiving value from them back doesn't drain me. So it's like, I don't care. Like, I'm of benefit and of service to you, and like that's fine. It's not like I'm giving away something and then I'm not getting back. It's like there's so much of it coming, just radiating off of me, that like people can just kind of like walk by and scoop some up on their way out the door. It's very rare that like I'm able to receive value back from someone on Facebook. You two are like some of the few people that where I actually receive something and learn something and I'm like, oh, I'm a better person now because of that. Usually it's just I post something and people are like, great job. And I'm like, oh God, can someone argue with me or what? Come on. I hope that answered your question.
Beautiful.
What about you, Jason?
So I don't have I definitely have criteria. So if somebody's projecting a bunch of shit onto me, that's clearly like and this happened recently, like there was a subthread with Justice that actually had some pretty meaty stuff. And this woman came in and she's like, you're like the worst kind of guy. I'm like, you don't even know, like, we're not even friends on Facebook, right? Like, and to be clear, all of my posts are public on Facebook, all of them. Like I don't do a single friends only post or a single, like, it's like, I just got right with a long time ago. Like, Facebook for me is marketing, period. Even if it doesn't seem like it is, it still is. Even when it's just posting a shit joke, just, it's still marketing. And that's the lens I have. Like, how could I do a thing that would have people be interested in me assisting them in, helping them evolve in whatever way they need to evolve, whether it's professionally or personally. But occasionally I just get somebody who, like, I trigger them. And I have, like, if you had met me 15 years ago, like the amount of energy and focus and time I spent on making myself as palatable as possible without sacrificing my general authenticity, like still like, not caring what they think about me, but still caring about my results, like, which is the people like, well, how do you be it's like, well, and if you're in service of evolving the planet, there's a certain level of refinement you have to have, because the whole purpose of it is to help people evolve, which was the challenge I had with, Scout. Like, if you push them too far, they actually if you want to stretch them but not tear them, because then they'll contract, regress. Then you have to do even more work to help them move forward. That's the problem with pushing somebody. And something I wanted to say back then, just circling back, there's no such thing as a resistant client. I'm so fucking sick of coaches saying like, well, they're just resisting. I'm like, no, you're not good enough. You're not skilled enough. You're not adept enough at delivering it in a way that they can receive it. And so the whole, like, the clients are just resistant, or resistance is a sign of blah, 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 or whatever. That's just them being lazy and being an empowered victim. It's like, well, it's the client's fault. No, fuck you. Like, it's your lack of skill. I'm probably just offended about 1,000 coaches, which I'm fine with because they don't play in the industry anyway. I know, right? They're just good. They're just shit. Anyway, so this woman comes in and she's like, the conversation was like, would you be interested in talking to a man who's in service of the feminine? And my comment was, is he in service of the feminine, capital F, which could be like my creative flows within me, or opportunity, or spontaneity, or is he in service of a woman? And I've seen a lot of men lose themselves in thinking they were the same thing, collapsing them, or a lot of really heavily traumatized women looking for a man who was in service of the feminine, which really just meant he would wash her feet and carry her bags and, be a sub, basically, like a lifestyle sub, maybe without the leather or latex, or maybe with it, but whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that, but let's not call it divine. Like it's a thing, but let's not say that's something that every man should strive towards. And yet there's all these men who just like it's like the apologetic move. They're like, I'm sorry for all, like, I apologize for all men through the ages for the patriarchy. I'm like, dude, I haven't done anything wrong. Like, I'm not going to apologize because I have a set of male genitalia and I'm white. Like, I don't have white guilt either. Yeah, there's some really shitty things. Like, we're coming up on the or today is the 100th, or we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa racial, like the Black Wall Street, that bombing. Horrifying. I didn't even know about it until 6 months ago. Like, I was blissfully unaware. I don't go, oh my God, I'm therefore horrible. I wasn't even alive. My grandparents didn't have anything to do with it. They were several states away. Like, I'm not going to just take on all this white guilt because I'm white. It's like it's the equivalent of black people thinking they should be subservient because they used to be slaves. Like, no. Anyway, so this woman, she's like, well, if you can't, like, if you're not, I can't remember what she said. If you're not, she didn't use the word surrendered, but basically she's like, well, if you can't appreciate the woman you're with, you're not appreciating the feminine. I'm like, well, Nicole Day-Done herself said, my deep reverence for the feminine is why I get away with so much, because they know it's coming. Like, when I ask a woman how old she is, I'm looking for the older, more textured age, not I'm not trying to be derogatory. Anyway, this woman was like, just coming from like, until she's like, until men stop raping women. I'm like, oh my God, a lot of unhealed trauma projected onto me. Said I'm that kind of guy a couple of times. I'm like, nobody's going, like, first of all, there's going to be no consensus for that. So I told her, I was like, I have to block you now. I'm leaving all this here so others can see it, but I don't allow people like this in my field. You don't get to act out your trauma on me. You don't get to project stuff on, and I get it. I'm a ripe canvas to project onto. People think I've been dealing with the whole, like, I'm this way or that way for decades. It's not a big deal to me. I don't take it personally. I get it. I'm a complex dude. It makes it more difficult for them. I experience dating as like, I want to educate them on how to be successful with me, and vice versa. There's that. And then there's just people who I'm like, they're fucking weird and I don't want them around. Like, recently I blocked a guy who I met in the integral community. I won't name who he is, but I'm like, super smart. Like the guy, like, we've had a couple of one-on-one conversations, over video and privately. And I'm like, he's just not, there's just something off. And I don't know what that is, but I'm like, I just don't want it around me. And so for me, and both those conversations, there's a woman I'm going to do another live stream with. And she's like, I was watching that whole thing with you and that other woman. she's like, and I could have been that woman 3 or 4 years ago. She's like, and I was really jealous, like your self-care and your ability to draw those boundaries in a clear and healthy way. And, and I wasn't sure how, like, I didn't know if it was going to fuck up my relationship with Justice. Cause I was like, you don't get to do this to me. Like, but I said it really nice. Like, you don't get to do this to me.
No,
And
Justice was totally standing up for you in that interaction. I read it because you remember you said you wanted me to look at it.
Well,
yeah,
I remember her saying,
like,
yeah, I don't know. The woman was so, and like, because I quit getting notifications because it was like it was a reply thread. And so, I think I do this thing too. I just turn off notifications sometimes, even to my own posts. Like, I'm like, I don't give a shit. But I just don't spend a lot of time in the comment threads. Like it's not as bad as Twitter because I've carefully curated my list. Are we boring? Am I boring you, Scout? You tired?
Yes. No. They're yawns of integration.
You're not tired. I'm just boring you. Okay. So there's that, but there's also just like, if I think somebody is teaching unhealthy things, I just don't want them in my field, I block them. Or if somebody continually and here's the thing though, I don't give a shit if people disagree with me. I don't care. I'm like, all right, I might learn something. Like I would like the thing I love most is intelligent disagreement in the comment thread. One of the things I've taken issue with some of my, I won't call them peers, but like some of the people I like who put good content out is they're like, hey, if you're going to disagree with me, just fucking unfriend me. I'm like, dude, we could learn from each other here. Like you could, like, it's not your new integral theory. Like we're supposed to, like, I love it if somebody disagrees with me, but then disagrees with me in a way that has me reconsider and then expand my perspectives. But people who are just like, there's a dude who, I didn't know who he was, but he like looked at my stuff, probably because a friend of mine shared it and he saw that. And he commented, he's like, I can't even hear what you're trying to say over how loud you are. I was like, okay. And then he blocked me. I was like, all right, problem solved. I was like, I don't even know who the dude was, but he, looked at me, judged me as just too self-expressed. And what they don't realize is along with the self-esteem, like it's hard earned. The rumor about me in high school is my father was in the CIA because I never talked. And so, yeah, I'm fully self-expressed now. 30 years of development gets you a few things. One of them is you get to be fully self-expressed. And that's confronting for other people. Just like, if you get your master's, like it has people, they're confronted by it. And that's okay. They can be confronted by it, but I'm not going to make myself small unless it's to scale myself back to be more effective with that person so I can help them evolve. But you got to be so tall to get on the ride.
We're probably coming up near the end of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you guys?
We were going to go for 4 hours.
Yeah.
I blocked my whole day off for this. What the fuck, Layman?
You got a bonus gift of some free time now, Jason. Use it
By the
wisely.
By the way, that's how I relate to it. When clients are like, I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm like, well, you can spend your money any way you like. Plus, I got to do this other thing I wanted to do. No problem.
So one of my favorite things is preparing for a meeting that turns out not to happen. And then I got all the energy and preparation strength, and suddenly I have this free space. I can just go.
Yeah. I saw this meme once that was like the divine masculine and the divine feminine, but it was like all like jokes, and like the divine feminine one of the divine feminine qualities was like that silent relief after the last minute cancellation of plans. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, that's the divine feminine. And then like divine masculine was like saying yellow over the phone.
Yellow.
I don't. It's a dad joke thing. All right. Well,
Yellow.
Okay.
I feel bad for you that you don't get it because it's definitely funny.
His dad was in the CIA.
No, he wasn't. That's the thing. Oh my god.
Yeah, we were talking at
So-
the beginning how we wouldn't know the theme of this thing at the beginning, but maybe we would at the end. So-
I don't think we
Yeah.
do now.
no, I don't think we do either, but I'm opening a
Statues.
space for retroactive reflection.
Uh-huh. I like that.
We should just call it square pegs.
Square pegs. All right.
Absolutely right, sir. Absolutely right.
As a metaphor. As a metaphor.